Welcome back to Property Management Madness. Property management is crazy, so let's talk about it. Pull up a seat, pull up a drink. We'll wait while you get ready. Okay, so today is going to be part two of where we left off with maintenance. So I have my guest speaker, Joe, over here.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. All right, so we were kind of talking about routine maintenance, reactive maintenance, um, and then where is it that, or
In
what is it?
education.
Yeah, what is it that you can do to help lower your costs in the future? And one of the number one things we mentioned is education. Educating your residents because sometimes they just don't know.
Yes.
They just don't know. Um, so I wanna I wanna take this time to tell a story about a time when a resident just didn't know.
Oh, Lord. I know this story that she's about to tell, and listen close.
Okay, so I had a resident just very recently, about a year ago, and this resident kept calling because she kept saying that her oven was catching fire, which is not normal.
No,
And not
not
at
at
all.
all. Not at
So
all.
it's not normal. She kept saying it's very smoky, it keeps catching fire. I'm like, what the heck is happening? So send maintenance out. Joe
Yes, and
goes out.
every time I go out, the only issue I see, it's not a mechanical issue. It's not an issue with the stove itself. The issue is the amount of grease in the bottom of the oven.
Dirty. Dirty
Dirty
oven.
ovens
Mhm.
will catch fire.
Yes.
Gas ovens, especially, because that is an open flame in the bottom and grease is flammable. Let's remember that, please.
Right. So send maintenance out. Joe goes, you got to clean your oven. Got to clean it. So I tell her, look, there's nothing wrong mechanically with your oven. It's catching fire because it's dirty. And she's like, well, I clean it. I clean it every day. And I'm like, okay, well, you still have to clean it. Is it catching fire every time that you're cooking? And she's like, yeah, mostly. I'm like, this is just seems weird. So it's about a week later, she calls again. No, this time she calls the fire department.
Yes.
She called the fire department because her oven was catching fire. And I'm like, I don't understand what's happening right now. So they pull the stove out and say, mechanically, there's nothing wrong with it, but just to be safe, you should replace it. So we replace it just to be safe.
Brand new oven,
So
brand
we
new
give her
stove.
brand new, yep, we give her a brand new range. 3 days later, she calls and tells us her oven is catching fire. I'm like, what is happening? So I call her and I'm like, I don't understand what's happening. I need you to break it down for me. What exists? Step by, like, pretend I'm an idiot. Pretend I'm an idiot. And break it down for me step by step. What are you doing? What is happening? And then at what point is it catching fire? So she tells me, she's like, well, it's when I make meat. I'm like, okay. I put the meat in the oven. The oven is on. I close the door. Maybe 20 minutes later, there's a lot of smoke. It's catching fire. So I'm like, okay, I don't like how, okay, how is all the grease getting in the bottom of your oven? How is this happening?
Crucial question.
And then I find out that she doesn't know that when you put something in the oven, it should be on a cooking sheet.
Yes. You must put all of your food on a pan when you go to put it in your oven.
I'm not making this up. I
This is
am
a true story.
I 100% am not making this up. So my resident who caught a oven on fire, wa was putting just slabs of meat
Just throwing it on the rack,
on the rack in
right in
the
the
oven,
oven,
and then wanted to know
turning it
why.
up to 350 and throwing the meat on the rack. That's all you have to do. It's like grilling outdoors, but without the grill.
Oh god, yes. 100% true. This is a story that happened. This only happened about a year ago. I have never experienced anything like this before in my whole life. This is something that you would think people would know, but we have different cultures, we have different, especially in the United States, here in the Metro Detroit area, we deal with a lot of different cultures, and some people just don't know.
And you also have, especially working in low income and HUD, you also have a lot of people that this is the first time they've lived on their own.
Yeah,
They've gotten away from mom and dad now, and they're still young, they're getting in low income housing because they have children or they have a need. And this is the first time they've lived on their own. This is the first
yeah,
time they have to take care of themselves. Somebody has always done it for them.
yeah.
So they don't know that when they go to throw meat in the oven, you
Yeah,
have to throw it on a tray first. That's what pans are for.
yep,
So these education is a huge part. As we learned, we didn't know we had to go that deep with our education, but we
yeah,
learned. We learned a lesson.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
uh, trying to decipher the problem of why this perfect oven kept catching fire for no reason was driving us absolutely insane because we don't want anyone to burn either.
Yeah.
So it's a major concern for us. So
Yeah.
we were very concerned about this, finding out the issue.
User error.
Yes, we were grateful that we found out that what the issue was and that we could educate her. And guess what? From there on,
Never caught on fire
oven
again.
never caught on fire again.
Never caught on fire
Wow, look
again.
at that.
Yep.
A little bit of education, people.
Yep. So I think that I I mean, at the end of the day, you're like, that's ridiculous. How does somebody not know that? But I mean, sometimes people just don't know, and you
Yep.
actually have to ask them, like, okay. And all of this started from a routine reactive maintenance problem. Like, she called in, my oven's catching fire, which is a huge problem. But then you realize, okay, this is an educational fix. Put a pan underneath your meat. Like,
Yes.
it was silly, and I don't necessarily know. I wouldn't say I don't necessarily know if I'm going to come into contact with that again, because I 100% will.
You very
But
much will.
it it's sometimes it's not malicious. Like, she didn't
Yeah.
know. She didn't know.
Yeah,
But
and you think in your head, "How can you not know?" But you have to remember, and you have to put yourself in your tenant's shoes sometimes, because you haven't experienced what they've experienced in
yeah,
life. So we all
absolutely.
come from different backgrounds,
Yeah,
and you have to know that when you're in property management, when you're in maintenance, and you're entering people's homes, these are their homes.
yeah,
And, they're not doing these things on purpose. Obviously, they don't want to live in a building that's on fire all the time.
right,
So they're not purposely catching their oven on fire, but
yeah,
they just thought something was wrong with the stove.
right. They
So,
didn't know. They didn't know it was them. It was them, but
yes.
they didn't know. And I mean, you have to have that type of conversation with your resident that allows them to keep their dignity.
Yes,
So
yeah,
I mean,
uh,
we can talk about how to do that in the next episode, or in future episodes, because that was also very interesting conversation to have. I enjoyed myself quite a bit, but yeah,
good.
it was just education.
Yep,
So
yep,
I think that
and
we
we
can just
take
bring that.
fires very, very seriously,
Absolutely, I think everybody
and
does.
again, educating your people that grease is a big deal, and it's not just
Yeah,
inside your oven, it's your oven fans that are right above your oven,
yeah,
especially if you fry a lot of foods, those things get caked in grease,
yeah, and
and
that can be a fire hazard.
yes, it
Mhm.
absolutely can. These things there are safety features in place. The fan is there to help, exhaust smoke and things like that. But constant cooking builds up grease, which builds up the possibility of a fire hazard.
And a lot of
So,
people don't realize that when you're cleaning the range is also, or the not just the range, but cleaning the range hood is also important. And I think,
yes.
again, it just goes to education.
Yep,
Make sure that, eh, there's a tact. You have to have tact, because your residents don't want you to think that they're idiots.
absolutely. You don't want to make them feel bad about it.
Right.
You want to show them in a way that is educating them and not
Right.
belittling them.
Yeah, exactly. So there is tact when it comes to that, and you can say, "Okay, oh yeah, no, we don't, we don't do it this way, or this isn't the way that it's done. Um, you're mistaken." But
Right.
there is tact in the way that you have to have these conversations. And again, like I said, we're going to go into that. That's its own little story, but great conversations to have. So, um,
Absolutely.
what about the next facet? We've already talked about preventative maintenance, reactive maintenance, education. The next is capital.
Capital expense,
Capital
capital
ex
maintenance,
capital expenditures, capital maintenance. So these are
your big
huge. I would say
projects, right?
I don't necessarily want to say big because sometimes they're not big. They're just
Well, yeah,
expensive.
your massive projects, your big things.
Yeah, your huge projects, things that you don't do every single day, things that you maybe you don't do every single year. These are roof replacements. These are hot water tanks,
Right, your boiler
furnace replacement,
systems,
boiler systems. We're looking at
your
AC unit repairs or replacements, rather not repairs, but replacements. Um, in a property like ours, we're also looking at things such as upgrades
yeah,
based on usable life. So HUD has a lot of things, and it's mostly just HUD, really, and affordable housing, where you have somebody coming in and telling you you have to manage the property in such a way that the residents live in a home that can pass inspection,
yes,
essentially,
yeah,
based on usable life. So this is changing cabinets, putting in new countertops. This is, I mean, and sometimes it is replacing things that are not broken.
yeah. It is sometimes. I mean,
Yeah.
because they expect you after so many times, the life of the item is the life of the item, whether they've kept it nice or not.
Yes.
They still expect it to be upgraded.
Yep.
So
So right now at my property specifically, we are going through a huge new CNA capital needs assessment for Mishta. We are Mishta financed, and it's been a nightmare.
it's
I mean,
been
it's
big, big, big.
it's it's very big. It's very big. So this is a needs assessment based on 20 years on what it is that needs to be replaced in the next 20 years, and they break it down year by year by year
A year.
by year. So you can decide what your reserve is going to be, how much you're going to put aside, and then what you're going to do, what your expectations are for maintenance and improvements for that year. And overall, the purpose is to maintain the property so it retains or increases in value
Yes.
consistently across the board. So I mean that's everybody's goal, but the CNA specifically is a needs assessment, and if somebody comes in and they write you this big long thing, it's like 78 pages. They take photos and they tell you, this is what needs to be done, this is when it needs to be done, and then they give you an estimate about how much they think it's going to cost.
Yes.
Yes.
And that's where things get interesting.
That's where things get very interesting.
Mm.
Um Because I would say that these people are, masters in their industry. They really
Yeah,
are.
yeah, they are.
Um, but when you are deciding how much something's going to cost 20 years from now, how do you know?
You don't,
Yeah.
because you don't know what's gonna happen from year to year. What about inflation?
Yeah, we
Look
didn't
what has
expect 15% inflation in 2
exactly.
years.
So the plans that have
Yeah.
already been planned for are so drastically underfunded at this point
Yeah.
because of inflation.
Hmm.
It's so hard to catch up.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and that's one of the reasons we received a new one. So our
yeah,
our last one was only 8 years old, and we saw all this inflation and this turmoil. So Mishta, we don't decide these things, Mishta does.
right.
And Mishta decided, okay, you guys need a new one. And now it's like, okay, well, we saw all this inflation happen. Now these are what the new prices are going to be.
Yes.
Sticker shock is very real.
Oh, ho, ho. It's
Yes.
kind of terrifying when you look at it
Yeah.
because it, you don't see it until you do,
Yeah.
and especially with the inflation added
Yeah.
in there, and then you're like, oh, oh, wow, okay. So planning for the future is always a great idea. Building
Yeah.
your budget is always a great idea,
Yeah.
but you can't build this in.
No.
You can't plan for a pandemic,
No,
so
absolutely
you
not. Who
you
would have
can't.
said? Who would have said in, 2017 that in 2 years, 3 years that we would have been home for 4 months,
Right? Waiting
living
in
at
lines for
home.
grocery
Yep,
stores and
not leaving, not being able to buy toilet
yeah,
paper. You can't leave your house. You have to sanitize
the
everything. People can't
insanity,
come
the
and see
fear.
you. If you end up in the hospital, nobody can go,
You're on your
yeah,
own.
you can't get visited. Nobody would have expected that. Never.
There's no way to plan for something like
Never.
that.
Never.
I mean, it was a world pandemic. The entire
Yeah.
world went through this, people,
Yep.
and we're all bracing for it now. We're all
Yep.
trying to scramble and figure out, okay, going forward, what's it going to be?
Right.
So, like Shauna said, we got a new CNA, and the sticker shock is real.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're looking at a difference in reserve personally for my property. This is just real life. This is what we're working with. We're looking at a $3 million deficit,
Yep.
and this is over 20 years. But where's this money going to come from? These are all the things that we expect to get fixed. This is how much we expect it to be. And now it is up to the property manager and the owner to figure out where we're going to cut things to save money, or where we're going to get extra money so we can miscellaneous income. I don't know where you're going to get $3
Yeah,
million
just
dollars
make it up.
worth of miscellaneous income, especially in a HUD property where there's a lot of protections. And I'm not saying
And
that that's a bad
everybody's
thing.
already low income anyways, so
Yes.
you can't it's not like you can just start charging for things. People can't
Yes.
afford it anyways. Just like our costs went up, their costs went up too.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, there's a
Protections.
lot of protections, and
Yeah.
that's not necessarily a bad thing, because
No, not
I
at
don't
all.
think that the resident or any tenant should be exploited because of the hardships of the
Yeah.
owner.
Penalized because
Yeah, because you
of
happen
something
to
that
own the
nobody could have planned
yeah,
for. So,
yeah, penalized because you just happen to own the building
mhm.
and you had a hard time. Like,
Yeah,
that's not fair. So I believe that, those types of protections are there for a reason. You can't just go around and charge people for whatever the heck you want because you feel like it.
which is a good
That's
thing because I
yeah.
mean, you got to think of yourself as a resident too.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to move in somewhere and then them just start charging you for everything off the bat when you just moved in and those blinds broken when you moved in.
Yeah. Yeah,
So it
exactly.
wouldn't be fair for the property to go back and try to start charging their tenants. So those protections are definitely an important part of it.
Yeah, especially when there is incentive.
Yes.
So, especially with something like this where there is incentive, I mean, you are in a $3 million deficit over 20 years. You need to figure out where this money is going to come from. Well, there's absolutely incentive to just be like, oh, well, you broke this. You now have to fix it.
There is.
You did this. You did that. You did this. And just start pointing fingers and charging residents. So I feel like the protections that are there are 100% warranted. I really do.
Absolutely.
So that's just me personally. That's what I believe. Um,
Well, tenants should be protected. The
yes.
landlords and owners should not be able to exploit their tenants
Yeah.
just because they're having a shortfall.
Yeah.
You can't just change the rules in the middle of the game.
Yeah.
That's not how things work, and it's not fair to tenants. So, having those protections built in is a necessary thing
Yeah. That's
because,
I personally believe that too.
yeah,
I believe that.
absolutely.
So capital improvements. So what would you say as a maintenance person? Do you maintenance every single day? What is it that you see capital wise that seems unnecessary or did seem unnecessary And now after you've been on site, because you're at an apartment complex, so you're on site, you see the residents, you're in the property every single day,
Right.
and you realize that, especially at at our property, um, we have such a high caliber, to
We
which
really do. We
that
hold ourselves to a very high standard at our
correct.
property, and I'm
Absolutely.
very proud of that
Yeah.
because I've seen a lot of properties. I've been a lot of places,
Yeah.
and let me tell you,
Yeah.
our residents are spoiled rotten.
Rotten.
They really are.
They're starting to stink. They're
Look,
so rotten.
RCNA says we have to replace these kitchens. Okay, 5 kitchens a year for the next 500
50
years,
kitchens a year.
or 50 kitchens. I'm sorry, 50 kitchens a year for the next however many years it takes us to finish this
5 years.
project. 5 years. Oh God, it feels like such a long time.
Yeah.
But by the time you're done, you got to do it again.
Yeah.
But not every kitchen is necessary. Some of the kitchens are still so nice. The cabinets are
Yeah.
still like brand new. They still have stickers inside. I mean,
Yeah.
granted, there are the ones that are not well maintained,
Dated.
that and some that are very dated.
Yeah.
But for the most part, our kitchens are not bad. Our kitchens are very nice, and
Mhm.
but we are going to have to update those.
But do you think that the CNA that's put into place, and at that point we're talking about now, um, just so the audience can understand, we're talking about usable life.
Right.
So the cabinets are in most of them beautiful condition. They
Absolutely.
really are beautiful condition. Our residents really take a lot of pride in their unit. They take a pride in the property manager, myself, or anybody, really any staff member coming into their unit and saying, wow, you really take good care of this place, and it makes them very proud.
Oh yeah, they love to hear when you walk into their unit, especially in a property like ours where we do have 211 units
Yeah.
and our residents live right there where we
Yep.
work.
Yeah.
So, not every unit you walk into is going to be beautiful.
Right.
And they know it. They know that
Hmm.
some of their neighbors have some issues. And when you walk into their unit and you see, wow, they really take care of this place. They care. This is
Yeah.
their home. You can tell.
Yeah.
They love it to hear it from you.
Absolutely.
Telling them, "Wow, you really keep this place kept up. You really keep this place
Yeah.
beautiful. Look at your cabinets. Your air conditioner filter is pristine." I tell people that all the time 'cause
Yeah.
they love to hear it.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah, I feel like you gotta butter them up.
yeah, yeah,
You
you
have to show
absolutely
them that
do.
you appreciate them, and that the upkeep that they're doing is important,
Yes,
and
because
it's, appreciated.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's gonna make your job easier. Because let me tell you, those apartments that are well kept and look beautiful when you walk in are the ones you do not visit very often.
Yeah.
So those are the residents that you need to show your appreciation
Yeah,
for.
but those residents, I kinda wanna do a little caveat on that. The residents who maintain are also the ones that are calling you when something goes wrong.
Yes. Yes.
So the ones that are
Which is a
not
big deal.
maintaining are the ones that also don't want to call you because their unit is a wreck,
Yeah,
or
and they
it's
don't
very
want you to see
dirty. They
it.
don't want you in their unit.
Yep, or they know
Um,
they broke something and it's
yeah,
gonna tick you off a little bit because it's something that doesn't usually get broken,
yeah,
so they just leave it.
or it's mangled.
Yes,
Like it's
mangled completely to where it looks
completely,
deliberate in some way.
yeah,
So they don't want you to see these things, so they don't call and report them
yeah,
until you go in and you do your yearly inspection. This is why
hmm,
your yearly inspection is so important, people. If you don't go in and
yeah,
ever see what's going on, then you don't know what's going on.
yeah.
And let me tell you, things can go awry in 1 year.
Oh yeah,
The place can be completely demolished in 1 year. It could be demolished in less than 1 year.
yeah,
So please do your due diligence and do your inspections.
yeah,
It's a big deal, but appreciating the ones that do what they're
yeah,
supposed to do and report their maintenance. It's what I tell people all the time. Don't hold off.
yeah,
Report your maintenance.
yeah.
I am going to be upset as a maintenance man when I walk in and you have 50,000 things wrong that
But you
I now
only
have to
called
fix.
because you have an out light bulb.
Yes, I came there to change a
Mhm.
light bulb, but while I'm there, I'm looking around and I see your blinds are hanging off your window. Your
Yeah,
door has a hole in it. Another door is off the hinges, and your faucet is pouring water all over the place.
yeah,
I'm gonna be a little upset with you, let me tell you.
yeah. Well, like Jay and I had, we had mentioned in the last episode, one of the most important and crucial quote employees that you can have that works for you is a good maintenance guy.
Yeah.
Somebody that's going to walk in and be like, okay, I'm just here to fix this light bulb because that's what you called for, but then calls the property manager and is like, this place is a wreck.
Yeah.
I saw
And
this and I saw that and I saw this. And did you know this person has a dog? I mean, and it feels a little feels like a little bit of a tattling,
it does sometimes. It does,
but
but you also realize the importance behind it
yeah,
because
yeah.
y- there are things we put in place not only for the tenant but for us as well. Especially if you have an animal and you haven't notified us that you have an animal, especially if the owner requires a fee for you to have that animal. There's for a reason because we all know what animals do.
Well, yeah, and
And
if
but we
there's no
also
animals for a reason.
yes, and we need to be aware of what's on the property. It is our property after all, our owner's property. We work for them,
Yeah,
and we want to make sure everything is safe for everybody
yeah,
and
absolutely.
fair for everyone as well. You can't do for one and not do for the other.
Yeah, yeah. So what I was mentioning before about usable life, we're going to go back to
Yeah,
capital, talk about usable life
we got a little off track.
a little bit. So I think everybody can agree that usable life for carpet here in Michigan, anyways, places where you don't get all the seasons, it's a little bit drier, you're not tracking stuff in. It's going to vary, but for here in Michigan, I would say usable life of carpet is about 7 years.
Yeah, I would say about 7, depending on the
Mhm.
carpet, how dark it is, the color. Every carpet's different, but 7 years with our seasons
Yeah.
and how wet it gets here.
Yep.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
and then and HUD says that usable life of cabinets is about 20. So or less, I think. No, it is 20. It's 20. So that's why there are reasons why we have these capital assessments where it does kind of sometimes feel like a waste. Because you can live in a house. I know that my grandparents did. They lived in a house for 40 years and they never updated anything and
yep,
those cabinets are still great. My aunt still
exactly.
lives in that house. She never replaced the cabinets. They're still in good order. There's nothing wrong with them, and they're over 50 years old now.
Right,
Now at
yeah,
this point, and my grandparents, they bought that house. It wasn't new, so
yeah,
who knows how old they are now, but they're at least 60 years old.
yeah.
So, I mean, it
But
does sometimes feel like a nuisance, but I feel like that's
it
again, it's a
does.
protection
But I also feel
for
like it
Mhm,
encourages your good residents to stay
absolutely.
and to continue being good residents
Yeah.
because they see that even though their cabinets are not dilapidated, they're not breaking apart, maybe they're a little dated, but they see that you're
Yeah.
replacing them anyways.
Yeah.
Nothing's wrong, and you're still coming in and updating for them because you want your building to last a long, long time.
Yeah.
So
And
the
the best
capital
way to do
expenses, I
that.
think, are very important because
Yeah.
they force you. I've seen large buildings where they are not funded by MISTA and they are not required to do these things,
Yeah.
and I see them falling apart,
Crumbled.
completely crumbled,
Crumble.
sides of buildings falling off,
Absolutely.
ceilings in apartments that people are actually living in falling in,
Oh yeah.
and they're living without ceilings because nobody has maintained it.
I'm glad you mentioned that. So we're wrapping this episode up. Again, I'm getting that 5 finger countdown right now. I feel like we're just constantly just keep going to the end. Well, this is good
We
because
really
that
do.
means that
A lot to
we
talk
got a
about.
lot of
Good
yeah.
conversation.
We have a lot of good context here. So, um, I think that our next episode we're going to talk about maintenance nightmares.
Oh, Lord, help us
So
all.
what you just mentioned, I mean, I think that all of us who have been in property management, maybe people who are brand new, little babies to property
Mhm.
management, you need to know
You
there are
really
some
do.
nightmares. There are
There
some
there are some
nightmares.
absolute horror shows.
Yep, but it's going to be great and you're going to get a laugh at our expense. It's going to be
Yeah.
awesome. Well, it was great having you on the show with me today, Joe. I think Jay's going to be back next time, but I'm sure you're
Yep.
going to be back. So,
Absolutely. I'll be around.
all right. Well, thank you guys for
It's
joining
great
us
being here.
and hopefully you just follow along and we're going to be talking about some nightmares next time. All right, have a good one you guys.
Take care, everyone.